Everything's so bad over here. I actually played the wrong intro music. So frustrated. And you guys are already making jokes about carrot raisin salad. It's fucked up. Just want you to know. It's not cool. But we're starting off the week with Pop Life, a show where we take deep, more fun dives into different aspects of pop culture, movies, and of course, something I spend a lot of time doing, music. I will not be joined by Conan tonight, even though he does host a movie show. I figured he had an ass full of talking about movies. So I brought two friends in that also enjoy talking about movies. And today we're going to be talking about the year in movies 1989. I'm thinking about making this an additional pop culture series. We have what was the greatest year of music. There is the exact same list for 1980 for movies. I will say the movie list though gets into some years where maybe I've seen like one film. Like I haven't watched a lot of movies from 1939, so this movie list may cause me to have to do a little more homework than I like. But when my good friend and fellow podcaster Kenzo Shibata hit me up and told me that he felt that 1989 was the greatest year in film history, I thought that was a bold claim. Sure, I knew the original Batman, the Michael Keaton one, hit theaters in 89. But beyond that, the details were a bit fuzzy. For many of us, especially those who came of age during the rise of home video, the lines between what was in theaters, what went straight to video, and what aired on cable often blurred together. 1989 was a pivotal year, a moment when the cinematic landscape was rapidly changing, and the home video market was beginning to dominate how we consumed movies. The year 1989 revitalized the superhero genre with Batman, saw Patrick Swayze transition from Dirty Dancing to playing the zen-like badass Dalton in Roadhouse, and introduced us to A-list actor Brad Pitt in the indie slasher cutting class. Christian Slater stepped into the spotlight as a teenage skateboarding detective in Gleaming the Cube of the skateboarding films of the 80s. What was your favorite? Was it Thrashing with the joust scene that we did play on the Red Zone? We're Gleaming the Cube. The skateboarding detective. I don't know. While Wes Craven tried to franchise another horror icon with Shocker, horror and comedy were in full swing that year, with Weekend at Bernie's giving us everyone's favorite dead uncle, and Disney making waves with The Little Mermaid. Robin Williams showcased his dramatic range in Dead Poet Society, while Denzel Washington discovered one of his most iconic scenes in Glory. Many believe that Spike Lee made a powerful statement with Do the Right Thing. I'm still trying to figure out what that statement was. And James Spader broke away from his typical high school villain role in Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Not to mention George Lucas and Steven Spielberg brought us the third installment of the Indiana Jones franchise, and that's just scratching the surface. So grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We'll be diving deep into the films of 1989, exploring every genre, every stand-up performance, and every iconic scene. And don't forget, we'll be opening up the phone lines in the champagne room for you to chime in with your thoughts. What films did we miss? What's your favorite from this era? To help me with this, I have, like I said, the man who brought this whole thing to my attention, coming all the way live from the windiest of cities, Kenzo Shibata.
Hey, Jason.
And coming all the way live from somewhere in the Southeast, he's everyone's favorite chain-smoking podcaster. And I think he's a Gen Zer. I don't even think he's a millennial. It's not fair that someone that young should be able to talk about old people stuff. JG Michael.
Not a Gen Z.
You're not Gen Z?
No, millennial.
Whoa, slow down.
33, man.
Weren't you born in like 94?
91.
Wow. Oh, sorry, Papa.
You still weren't born when this list commenced.
You are not cognizant when this list is made.
The 80s is like the 90s though, because if you were growing up in the 90s, all these like the Batman movies were always on TV, or you were renting them from Blockbuster, so
or
they sort of
the
bleed
cartoon was just so popular, the Batman cartoon. JG brought something to my attention, and I feel like a horrible person for leaving this out on the introduction. If my daughter was watching this show, she would call me to chastise me because I made her watch it probably around the time she was in junior high, getting ready to go to high school. Probably one of my favorite films of all time. There's a show that used to be on this channel, Movie Night Extravaganza. They had the writer-director of this movie on their show. Heathers comes out in 1989 and pretty much gives us the late, oh, it hurts to say it, the late Shannon Doherty. But Christian Slater was just killing it in 89, huh? He's skateboarding and saving his adopted or avenging the death of his adopted Vietnamese brother. Do you remember that movie, JG? Have you seen that movie?
Is that Gleaming the Cube?
Gleaming the Cube.
Yeah.
Do you remember that movie, Kenzo?
I do, yeah. I do remember that movie for the key scene where they hotwired a car with a skate key. And like all my friends tried doing that on their parents' cars, but
it just destroyed everybody's ignition.
It's not 89, but it is 1990. The other great Christian Slater movie from around this time is Pump Up the Volume.
Yes.
That's the next year, yeah. We watched it on movie night on this channel.
Pump Up the Volume is great.
This era of Christian Slater, I remember he did like the talk show circuit, and they were really trying to play up the fact he was supposed to be the young Jack Nicholson, because he kind of talked like him and he slicked his hair back for a little bit. And I think they just dropped that after a while when his star kind of started to fade.
Did his star ever really fade? He's always seemed like kind of like once his hair started to go, do you think that's when his star faded? I
have a movie that's in theaters now with Channing Tatum that's out right now. Blink Twice. The only like crime thriller movie that's like rated R that has an actual trigger warning at the beginning of the movie that I've heard of this year. Like apparently they're doing trigger warnings on movies now.
I'm not a big
Gina Davis is in it too. I need to see it. So
Gina Davis?
Yeah, I'm like, what? Gina Davis is in this? It's called.
I was very hurt she's not in the new Beetlejuice.
I know, like,
yeah.
How are you even going to do the new Beetlejuice without Gina Davis? Newer Yank says 89 has some banger movies. I'll admit, I was shocked at how many movies actually came out in 89 outside of Batman, because as I say in the intro, the movie years, especially the 80s and for a lot of the 90s, it blurs for me because of all the video renting we did and the stuff that came on cable or straight to cable. Like there's some Andy Sedaris movies that came out in 89 and he's like the king of straight to cable. For me, even at 47, straight to cable cinema. But Kenzo, let me start it off with you. You were the one that hit me up maybe about a month ago, and you were like, out of the blue.
Yeah.
I get a text message from Kenzo, and he goes, Jay, I just want you to know 1989 is the greatest year of cinema. What made you say that?
Well, my son and I started watching Cobra Kai, the continuation of the Karate Kid series. And so when he was very young, we watched the first Karate Kid and the second one, because I just absolutely love those films. And it never occurred to me to watch the third one, because I remember I watched it once and just thinking this is just derivative crap of the first one. And the villain in there this was like when Steven Seagal's star was on the rise, and the Silver, the bad guy from part 3, I thought was just a copy of Steven Seagal. He was this ponytailed karate Jew. And I'm just like, they're just trying to capitalize on the fact that, this series is still really hot. Steven Seagal is hot. They're going to try to find a way of putting him in this. So I kind of just blurred that from my memory. And then when my son and I were started to watch the Cobra Kai series, I realized that there were some plot holes for him because he never saw the third one. So we went and, I don't know, rented it on Amazon or whatever, and watched the third one. It didn't occur to me that it was any better, but what that got me on was a Wikipedia loop of looking at all the films that came out in 89, because that movie came out in 89. And then I'm like, damn, okay, Batman, I remember that. And then I remember like the summer of 89, it was Batman, Back to the Future 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, UHF. And I'm like, wow, that was
I went to the
summer
theater to see UHF, by the way.
So I saw it in the second run theater. In the second week it was out, because movie just got trampled by everything else, I remember. So I got to see it for $1, which was great when it was still a fairly new movie. And I just remember thinking, damn, this movie's great. Why did it go straight to the second run theater?
What about you, JG? What did you go to the theater to see in 89? Little Mermaid? Is he muted? Are you muted? We can't hear you. Did you mute yourself?
Sorry, I muted myself. I was saying, I don't know. I've never thought of 89 as like a particularly special year in
it's on the list.
Cinema.
It's number 6 on the list. I sent you guys the list.
Yeah.
Did you check out the list, Kenzo, of the top movies, years of movies of all time? And 89 was like 7 or 6 on the list. I was shocked.
Wow.
One thing that surprised me is I didn't realize that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade actually grossed bigger than Batman did.
Did it really?
Yeah. By like, let's see, about $60 million.
That's a lot. I have the list of everything that came out, and I did watch, as I was telling the guys, I watched last night to get ready, because I had a feeling that both of these guys, look, don't let Kenzo's heavy metal t-shirt fool you. Okay. Kenzo is an extremely intelligent man. JG Michael, don't let his Sorority House Massacre shirt
I like how you knew it was Sorority House Massacre.
Which is a feminist film.
Extremely intelligent people. So I went to go watch the more popular arty films of this year. So I watched a Scenes from a Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. I had never seen it. It's on YouTube, by the way, with the boobs.
Don't say that out loud, or else YouTube will catch it.
They're gonna say that. Really? The Jubblies.
I don't know.
The Jubblies were there, and they were all real, because and another thing that I appreciated, you could be an old person and just take your shirt off. Because when you watch I also, right before the show, I was watching The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and His Lover. That dude's bing bong is all over that movie. And that's the most regular looking white man with a bald spot on top of his head I've ever seen. Just a regular ass bing bong. There's nothing special about it. It's not like scraping the floor. He doesn't have 6-pack abs. He's actually, what do they call it? Dad bod.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the most dad bod ever. And Helen Mirren's like, you have a wonderful prick. I was like, damn, can I take my Marty McFly time machine back to 89? I don't want to do all these crunches.
And this was a year after Cocoon, where you had a bunch of very old
people.
Except for Wilford Brimley, who was like 50 and an 80-year-old.
He was like 40. He was a year older than me. God, that man has aged horribly. That man ages like cheese.
And when he died at 85, I'm like, how has he been 85 for 30 years? Like, that's amazing. And the spokesman for diabetes, and lived 30 years looking like that. Like, he's an inspiration.
Forever. Like, I don't know. Like, if we look at some of the movie, here's a movie that JG went to the theater to see, and I feel like JG had this. Do you remember? And if you say you remember this, JG, I swear to God, I will walk to Florida and shake the shit out of you, because I know you're lying. Do you remember when grocery stores sold VHS tapes?
No.
Thank you for being honest. That's why you're a wonderful person. Wrap it up for JG Michael. Everybody sign up, subscribe to Parallax.
I should have said, of course.
And they had those big plastic fucking, those big cases. JG went to go see All Dogs Go to Heaven.
I loved All Dogs Go to Heaven. That and like I remember I used to wear out the VHS tapes I had of the two I always watched were All Dogs Go to Heaven, but even more so Gremlins 2. I was obsessed with those two movies. Yeah.
Because the Gremlins are a lot more fun in Gremlins 2. They're less scary.
It's also just an insane movie.
It is.
That probably was very unnecessary to make.
The Key and Peele sketch for Gremlins 2 is one of the more brilliant sketches I've ever seen. Have you've seen the Key and Peele sketch from that, Kenzo?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I'll have to find and give it to you, but basically they're doing like a Hollywood pitch and it just sounds like the most ridiculous shit ever, but it actually is all the things that are in that movie.
Huh. Well, that movie did kind of play like a parody of everything that was popular in 1990. Like Daniel Clamp was a Trump parody.
Yeah.
That movie actually has sort of a weird history because people don't realize it, but Gremlins 2 was actually like Joe Dante's tribute to an old 1930s movie called Hell's a Poppin'.
Really?
It's like one of the weirdest musical movies ever made. Like, it's just this musical that's completely surreal and absurd and has all kinds of cameos from different characters. Like Frankenstein's monster shows up for no reason, but it's like it's a musical comedy that in like, I think it's set in Hollywood. I saw it years ago, but it's basically his version of Hell's a Poppin', where, you know, anything that can happen will happen for no reason. That's Gremlins 2.
that is that movie.
Hell's a Poppin' is a classic. If anyone hasn't seen it, look it up.
The number one film for 1989 is a movie that we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about because I have to admit I've never seen it and I'm okay with that. Dead Poets Society.
I had a teacher in college that showed us that.
I bet they did.
And I don't remember anything.
I was an English teacher, a high school English teacher. So I thought that I had seen it. I'd seen clips of it and I've seen people reference it a lot in like professional developments. I've been to like professional development meetings where people have shown clips of like, this is how you be a great teacher. You stand on the table and you throw a book and say, you know, this is, you know, poetry is about living. It's not about just the words on the page, but I've never actually seen the movie beginning to end.
I get these movies confused because there was a few college movies that came out around this time. And there was another movie about college, but it was like a movie about like a Jewish kid that went to Harvard or something. Or is this the same movie? And they were super racist to him.
Not School Ties.
School Ties.
Was it School Ties?
Yeah, School Ties.
Is it that old?
All that stuff was the same, dude. If it had white people going to an Ivy League school, to me, it's like it's the same, whatever.
Now the funny thing is, 89 also brought us Lean on Me, which is like, okay, so you go to the white school, you get Robin Williams standing on a desk telling you to live your life and woo women. If you go to a black school, you have a principal with a baseball bat chasing you out, telling you you're on crack.
You smoke crack, don't you? You smoke crack, don't you? Why don't you just jump off and kill yourself?
And like they showed that to us.
Side.
They showed us Lean on Me in a college level educational psych class that I took.
About what not to do?
No, I don't even realize. I remember the context of it. It was, you know, a white woman was the professor of the class. She just showed it to this auditorium.
It sounds like a white woman.
I think it was a lot of just, those of you who don't know what an urban school is like, this is what it's like.
I want to say something about Lean on Me because I think it's really important. We have to place 89 historically in what was going on. We're right at the ramp up of the crack years, and we're at a moment where urban schools are doing this new thing called maybe bring metal detectors in. Mm-hmm. So if you go to school in Chicago, parts of New York, definitely parts of California, maybe parts of Massachusetts, probably Philadelphia. There were some bad schools, but being a person from a really bad area, I don't think any school was ever as bad as the school in Lean on Me. The movie opens up with, I want you to, just close your eyes for a second. Because all bad schools and movies are the same thing, right? Either the music is like really slow and ominous, or it's like really shitty hip hop. Mm-hmm. So this is 1989, so it's going to be a combination of ominous hip hop, right? And it shows the like a bustling hallway, and this girl goes. These dudes see this girl and they like rip her shirt off, because that happens in every bad school. Just rip a girl's shirt off, and they just assault her. And one of the teachers tries to like break it up, and then another student tries to break it up, and it's supposed to be like this. Hey, this is East Side High. Every day is like this. And this movie is interesting because it's based off of a real person. Joe Clark is a very real man. And Joe Clark was being heralded as a hero because he did something that's highly illegal. Joe Clark, to keep the drug dealers out, to keep the criminal element out, he had his security team chain the doors shut during school, which is an insane fire hazard, right? And there were some parents that didn't like what he did because Joe Clark was like, you're bad, you're out. You're bad, you're out. And when we talk about underclass ideology and tough on crime, this movie is the blueprint for what you're going to see moving forward for every film about a high school, probably until the 2000s. And they're all extremely fictional accounts. What was the movie Dangerous Minds? That was based on a true story. Have you ever read the actual teacher's interview where she's like, everything in that movie is so fake, like nothing happened? She goes, I had to fight like hell to keep them to stop having a plot in the movie where I fucked a student. She goes, I didn't invent bringing hip hop into a classroom. Like there was so much fake stuff because that's what people want to see. It's sad to say. And when we think about inner city schools, we still think Lean on Me. That doesn't mean that inner city schools are great and wonderful and no one gets in a fight. But as someone that spent some time in inner city schools, and because my dad worked for a good school district, I got to spend some time in some non-inner city schools. And there's one thing I noticed in both those schools: kids fight, teenagers fight, girls fight, dudes and girls fight, kids fight. I've never met a person that went to school. I've never seen a fight in my life. You're going through all these changes, but when you watch a movie like Lean on Me, you're watching 30-year-old men in high school be like street hoods. And of course it makes sense that Morgan Freeman has to like kick ass and take names, but he runs this school in this fascistic way it scares the teachers. And then people, everybody clapped at the end of it. He takes a student that allegedly smokes crack to the top of the school and tells him to jump off because smoking crack and committing suicide are the same thing. And this was the tough love that everyone felt that these kids need. I was talking to a guy in the bar the other day that believes the same thing. Lean on Me, one of the worst, best movies of all time. I say best because it's a movie of a certain era for me, and I will watch it because of Fairy Side, right? When he makes him sing the school song. If you ever get caught, you got to sing the school song on a note, or you get expelled. That's what the thing was like. If you don't do it right, expulsion. And so there's some things you can just laugh at, like you smoke crack, don't you? But Do the Right Thing. I've never understood that movie. I need you to explain it to me because I don't get it. I've never met a black person that walked into an Italian place or a Chinese restaurant and asked why there's no black people in the world. Never met anyone that did that.
Well, I think of Do the Right Thing, you have to watch it, I think, through a lens of Spike Lee is an art school, film school guy. It wasn't as much social commentary as it was, here's my play, completely a kabuki theater about what's going on. And, let's write a movie somewhat that a popular Public Enemy song could easily fit into like it. I love the movie, but I'm not getting social commentary out of it. I like the visuals of it. I like the over the top performances. I think John Turturro is awesome in it. But I don't see it as a very deep film, to be honest.
I thought it was. I hated a lot of the characters. Like I hated the fact. This is why for me it is Fantasyland racial bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
There is a white man in New York City with a Celtics jersey on. I don't know if you guys have met white people from New York City that are sports fans.
Mm-hmm.
And they're from New York. The whole thing is he's supposed to be from Brooklyn, right? Because so they're in Bed-Stuy. I've been to Bed-Stuy. I was very hurt that Bed-Stuy wasn't that colorful. I just want you to know that. I saw coloreds, but it was not colorful. But the guy, that's the guy that steps on bugging out shoes with the Celtics jersey on. And they say something about him being from Boston. And he was like, no. And he says whatever borough of New York he's from. And it's like, there's no way. There's no way. That to me is like going to LA and seeing a person from mid-city with a San Francisco Giants jersey on. You will never see that. You just can't see it. You will never see it. You can tell me a native New Yorker with the accent is walking around with a Boston Celtics jersey in division?
That's the one thing that like racists will make exceptions for is sports. Like I grew up in the 90s in Chicago. Every racist white person I knew loved the Bulls still. They loved Jordan. Even, the racist homophobic ones loved Rodman. They would wear Rodman jerseys. Like that's an exception those folks would make. So yeah, that is ridiculous. The Celtics.
Ridiculous. Like, come on, dude. You're trying to prove your point. Wait, like I get it. A lot of people from places like where I'm from, where the Warriors games weren't shown on like TV until I was in like the 9th grade. I'm not even trying to be funny. I thought where the Warriors played, the Coliseum, I thought that's where the Ice Capades was. It was where the Raiders and the A's played, and then the Ice Capades. Because there's Lakers games. You got Lakers games all the time. If you're from the Bay and you're our age, everybody's a Lakers fan. Everybody's a Lakers fan. Unless you had like hardcore parents that were from the Bay and like remembered 76. But yeah. So, JG, you have no comment on Do the Right Thing?
I prefer later
Spike Lee.
Bamboozled I'm a big fan of, but
Bamboozled is a hell of a lot better than Do the Right Thing. Also, Do the Right Thing is the movie where Spike Lee has to start making concessions because black critics are like, your movie isn't the real black story. There's no violence. There's no drugs. There's no bad stuff. And it's like, why do you want him to make a movie about bad stuff? He doesn't understand bad stuff. He's like 3rd generation bourgeois black dude. You want him to pretend, and then you get Jungle Fever with literally some of the most offensive performances. I've never had a dope fiend, and dope fiends have done some amazing shit around me. I've never had one do some old soft shoe for some and sing me a little crack jingle. Gotta smoke some crack. Remember Sam Jackson dances and the mom encourages the dances? Like, Spike Lee, where did you meet these magical black people? Because they don't exist in real black life.
If Spike Lee was really, pushing things, Nike would not have given him a deal.
Right?
Like he was in Nike commercials with Michael Jordan.
Is it the shoes?
Yeah.
It's got to be the shoes.
The folks that were bankrolling him did not see him as a threat.
We have a person in the chat by the name of Sean Moon that wants to prove to everyone that he is the most not fun man ever. Sean, we're not talking about Roger and me. We may talk about Born on the 4th of July, but we're not going to talk about Roger and me, Sean. Sean, I think we're all the same age. You have to have saw some good movies in '89. I refuse to believe you were the most not fun child of all time. JG, I know you saw Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. What did you think when you saw it?
I loved all the Indiana Jones movies growing up, so that was.
I never saw the Last Crusade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I refused to watch it.
Why?
I thought it was a bridge too far. Kenzo loves it.
I liked it. It was the very anti-Nazi one. It was the one where I learned about Nazi book burning before I learned about that in school. So yeah, it was a solid film.
That's all you got to say about it?
I remember enjoying it, and that was about it.
I just didn't get excited for it. Like the 2, Temple of Doom.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my young life.
And the first one with the faces melting. That's an image. God. I was going
to say Raiders of the Lost Ark with the face melting.
Terrified.
I will always remember from Indiana Jones.
Terrified me.
Because I always thought, I as a kid thinking, am I going to be in a situation where I like open a haunted tomb and my face is going to melt?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I grew up in a pretty religious household with my grandparents. So the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be like this magical thing. And the fact that everybody's face is melted off of it, that's why I'm scared of the Bible to this day. And when the guy's face melted, I had to like turn. I'm 47 years old. If we were all watching that movie, I probably would turn away from the screen.
I mean, I was 10 in 1989 and half Jewish. So like the horrors of the Nazis, I knew about. Like that was not, I mean, I already knew like that was something that was kind of beaten to death into my head. But, you know, voodoo temples of doom and lost arcs that melt faces. Now that inspired nightmares in me.
Roadhouse is one of the greatest movies.
Yes.
Of all time. There is a bar in Chicago, Kenzo. I don't know. Look at that.
I got the Pain Don't Hurt tattoo.
That's why we're friends.
Absolutely.
That's why we're friends. There's a bar, and I hope it's still there. I'm going to be heartbroken. And some band person owns it. I don't remember who. But it's a Roadhouse themed bar. What's the Polish side of town, Kenzo?
Well,
it was in like a Polish.
The far northwest side has a lot of Polish people, a lot of Polish and Italian people. And then the traditional Polish side is actually no longer Polish. It's totally just gentrified. I mean, there's probably Polish yuppies there who are like 7th generation or whatever. But yeah, if you go to the far northwest side, you'll see pockets of very Polish neighborhoods.
I don't remember. Like I said, I don't remember what side we were on. But it was a Roadhouse themed bar, and they were like playing Roadhouse all the time. And I was like, I found probably one of the greatest places in America because Roadhouse, like Patrick Swayze was the coolest motherfucker in the world to me after I watched Roadhouse. Be nice. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the line I will always remember from that movie. I can
Yes.
swear, right?
Yes, please.
The scene where the one main bad guy's henchman Jimmy is like beating the shit out of Dalton.
Yeah.
He just says like, "Pain don't hurt. I used to fuck guys like you in prison." I remember I watched a re-release of that movie in theaters at the Oaks Theater in Pittsburgh and was laughing my ass off. I used to fuck guys like you in prison.
You know, that's what you say to someone you're about to beat up.
Right.
That would scare me.
Well, in Tango and Cash, they allude to that when they talk about the acronym FUBAR, but Roadhouse just says it.
Oh yeah. Remember when he kicks the one dude out for banging the chick in the back?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow.
Actually,
that movie, I feel like do you remember when Spike TV was a thing?
Yes.
The man's TV network. That was like the movie that was invented for something like Spike TV. That is like the man cave movie.
And the beginning of the Roadhouse, before Dalton gets to town, it's like a white East Side High. All the things that happen at East Side High at the beginning of that film happen at the Roadhouse. Before
it really does.
Dalton, who was
there's a sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sexual assault in the beginning. I forgot about that. It's a white East Side High. Huh. Huh. So Patrick
Also,
Swayze
that movie
is just more
features my favorite pro wrestlers of all time, Terry Funk.
Terry Funk.
He's one
That's
of
when
the
Terry
bad
Funk
guys.
stops
Yeah.
wrestling, starts acting.
Yeah, yeah. And he gets I think he's like the bouncer before Patrick Swayze that gets kicked out.
John Doe's in that movie as well.
Yeah.
Oh, from X?
From Band X, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Much nicer man. He would practice at the studio. I don't know if he still lives in Oakland, but he was living in Oakland, and he's like a vegan. And all I could think, he came up to like pay, I think, at the end of his session. And all I could think was, you're the guy in Roadhouse. I was just trying to be cool. I was like, oh shit, it's the guy from Roadhouse. I totally forgot he was a musician. I was more just like, dude, the Roadhouse guys. That is
I like
Roadhouse.
I like Roadhouse a lot, but Roadhouse is also the reason I hate like discourses over like movies that are supposedly so bad they're good. So I'm like, Roadhouse is not so bad it's good. Roadhouse knows exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's just a crowd-pleasing movie. It's not meant to be thoughtful or anything. It's a movie where you're like, yeah, kick his ass, Patrick Swayze, kick his ass. Like, that's why you're watching it. It delivers on the goods that it is selling you. Like, it does exactly what it intends to. You know, in that sense, it is good at what it is.
It is a lot like professional wrestling itself. Like professional wrestling does not claim to be sports. It's entertainment. And that's what Roadhouse was. And whoever Patrick Swayze's agent was brilliant because it is kind of the anti-Dirty Dancing film. There's nothing romantic about Roadhouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, it really showed that he had range. He could be the sensitive dancer and he could be the super bouncer. Which also 89 was this great year for those films that were just, here's a really stupid premise, but it's going to work because the writing is just perfect for, what it is. The acting is perfect for what it is. Like, if you just pitched a movie, like here's a movie about a really good bouncer that turns around this really violent bar. There was a lot of cocaine going around back then, but
even if you had a mountain of it like Scarface, that doesn't seem like him. Who are we gonna get? Eastwood? No, Patrick Swayze. The dancing kid? Word?
He's saying she's like the wind.
He went from Dirty Dancing to Roadhouse, and then only a few years later, he's doing Tu Wong Fu. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, well, he did Next of Kin this year too.
Yeah, Next of Kin.
Casualties of War is one of the hardest to watch movies I've ever seen. Ayatollah of Kraut Rock and Roll says Puppet Master Uncle Buck and the very underrated and forgotten Casualties of War starring Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox came out in 89. That's an interesting movie too because Michael J. Fox is coming off of Family Ties and Back to the Future 2, which I really enjoyed. I actually went back and watched it about a year ago when we were doing a show on sci-fi. A good friend of show and friend of mine, Michael Harris, wrote this really great book about kind of what science fiction was trying to tell us and how Back to the Future is this movie about protecting middle class security, and the first one, and he really gets into kind of the warnings of the second one, which, I don't think those directors knew Donald Trump would be president. I don't think that, it's science fiction. You kind of, what the world's kind of leaning to. But to make Biff kind of a Trump-like character, to have, the world kind of reduced to gambling, porn, and poverty is really where we are right now. Everything is gambling. I was listening to a sports talk radio show on the drive up. I was in the Bay Area, and everything is, what's the over under on this? What's the over under on this team's wins for the year? I'm like, this isn't how sports talk radio is supposed to be. You guys are supposed to talk about the players and the coaching and the schemes, not about odds. But the gambling apps have changed everything, and kind of everybody gambles in some capacity. It's just too easy. And to be so prescient, to be like, yeah, this is going to be the future, because you don't have the option. And you can kind of see that in the late 80s The factory jobs are gone. The idea that you can kind of F off. You know, one of the things that we forget when we talk about the wonder of union labor and factory jobs is you could kind of fuck off in your teen years.
Mm-hmm.
There's movies about that, right? Like, I don't want to work at the factory like my daddy. But now everybody's like, man, I wish I had a factory job like my dad. Mm-hmm. He supported all of us on one salary. And Back to the Future kind of shows you, part 2 really shows you that harsh reality that's coming. But all we really saw was hoverboards and that's all, and flying cars. That's all I saw.
And the fake Crispin Glover. That story. Yeah. Crispin Glover was, Chad, if you don't know about this, he was not going to do the second one. Well, there was a dispute. He asked for a certain amount of money, and
he sued them over this.
Didn't want to. Yeah, they sued them because what they did was they had this actor that somewhat looked like him. They put old aging makeup on him because George McFly was older in this film, and then they had him hanging upside down because in the future that's like a health craze, is to be hanging upside down. So you could barely tell. And as a 10-year-old, I thought that was Crispin Glover. I had no idea. So, this was years before AI, and he sued because it's like, this is my character.
Another movie that comes out that has a lot of copycats, The Abyss. Underwater movies are a theme in 89 and 90. Did you like The Abyss, JG?
The Abyss is great, although I'm annoyed that we'll never get like a proper release of it. I don't know if you've seen what James Cameron has done with the big Blu-ray releases, but
no
4K releases. Yeah, they're using AI processing, and the color timing is off. It doesn't look like it's supposed to, how it originally looked, which is very, very unfortunate. True Lies is even worse with that, but there has not been a good release really of The Abyss. Probably the closest you're going to get to the original coloring is like the Laserdisc. But The Abyss is like a beautiful film too. It's very incredibly done. So it's a shame that like it's hard to see it in its original form.
Maybe it's on YouTube. There's so much stuff on YouTube right now because YouTube wants to compete now with some of the other streaming services. I've been shocked I would have been able to find on YouTube. You can watch Thrashing and Gleaming the Cube on YouTube. So there's that. And they keep the boobs in the Beverly Hills Class War movie. They keep all the boobs in. 89 is also a time where you can have like this hot, sexy thriller, and you can see nudity, and no one's complaining.
How would you guys compare The Abyss to Cameron's big obsession now with doing the Avatar movies?
As far as digital graphics, or
no, I just mean like generally, like what I think people my age think of James Cameron for Avatar, but to me, I think of movies like The Abyss, True Lies,
Terminator.
I mean,
Terminator.
That's what I think at first is Terminator.
Yeah.
I mean, The Abyss when it came out was like all the rage. I remember, because I don't know if you were like this, Kenzo. I know there's like a 2-year difference between us. Did you watch Entertainment Tonight?
Yes.
So I remember Entertainment Tonight was all over The Abyss, and pretty much anything that anyone was saying about The Abyss, anything I could read about it, I would follow, because that scene where the face comes out in the water in front of who was that female actress?
Was it Mary Beth Mastrantonio?
That's who's in The Abyss, right, JG? You're muted.
I think so. Yeah.
Another classic movie that I saw the sequels to, and I think I own this on video cassette. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I
love all those. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
What came? I always forget. So it was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then it was Honey, I Blew Up the Kid that came second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our friend Brian Yusno was involved in one of those.
He was
really.
Which one was he involved in? Because he told us about that on the interview, and we were. I was
actually
like,
don't. I think it was Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Uncle
Yeah,
Buck.
it was Honey, I Blew Up the Kid that he
he wrote or something, right?
Stuart Gordon helped write it with him.
That's so crazy.
Free animator frame. Yeah, it's weird.
Did you guys watch Uncle Buck?
Yes.
John Candy could do no wrong to me, and as much as oh god, what is his name? John Hughes hated black people. I did watch all his movies. Kenzo, you're from Chicago. You're from John Hughes's backyard, which you're not, which is like the suburbs. But can you talk a little bit about why John Hughes hates black people?
Well, I know that he was a Republican.
I didn't know
for sure. Like he was, very outwardly a Republican. He was from a North Shore suburb where there just weren't black people.
So he didn't think they existed. They were like Snuffleupagus to him.
I think so. Like now there are more black people there, but the North Shore is where city people move when they have a little bit of money and they don't want to have black neighbors.
Oof.
So these are the suburbs that are just north of the city. And definitely in his heyday, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was extremely lily white. And so, yeah, I mean, he probably just, it was like black people were like a Snuffleupagus to him.
Because the only time I can think of in a John Hughes film that there's people of color is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he has the man that they kind of make him kind of a swarthy individual with the black eye, and they go joyriding in the car.
The parking attendants, yeah.
Parking attendants. That's the only thing I can think. I can't think of any other Hughes movie where he even tries to have, because in all the high school scenes too.
Well, I mean, high school,
all white detention.
Like New Trier, that's where like Donald Rumsfeld went. Like
no shit.
He never called the schools because they're all from Shermer, Illinois, which is a fictional place, but like they're all based off of New Trier, which is where like the richest families in the Chicago area, like all the people that their folks moved out of Chicago to get away from black people. The kids eventually go to New Trier. Then they have a track to either at the minimum a Big Ten school, but maybe even an Ivy League school.
Wow.
Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy, whose family is like friends with the Powells and the Rumsfelds, is from there.
Explains why they came out of nowhere.
Although he's half black. So
is he really?
Yeah.
I'd have to see like some paperwork.
He had I used to see him at shows when we were teenagers. I wasn't friends with him, but like we would go to the same hardcore shows, and he had dreads.
Really?
Yeah.
Does he say that now, or does he just not bring it up?
I don't know if he brings it up.
I don't think anybody. I would never ask Pete Wentz. Like Slash, you can look at Slash and be like, "You tan real good. What's up with that?" Lenny Kravitz, kind of obvious, but Pete Wentz, I didn't see that one coming.
He's bluish, I'm pretty sure.
JG, what is your take on John Candy movies?
I like John Candy, although my favorite John Candy is sort of considered his anti-classic.
What's that?
Nothing But Trouble. The Dan Aykroyd misfire of Misfire.
Why is that an anti-classic? That's with the Digital Underground and Tupac.
No, I love that movie, but it's only recently begun to like find a cult following. Like when it came out and it like failed horribly. People were calling it trash and whatnot. I think it's a fun movie.
I mean, that's everyone's introduction to Tupac. So
I think that's another one of those
I always
movies.
forget that Tupac has like a whole scene in it.
Yeah.
And Dan Aykroyd lets him go. He's like the judge.
Down with the underground.
I always remember the Bone Crusher thing, the roller coaster ride that he kills you with in the town.
The Little Mermaid, 1989. JG.
Like I said, all Dogs Go to Heaven is my animated movie for 1989.
You're not going to talk about the Little Mermaid?
I mean, it's a Disney classic,
I did find out that it was true that there was a penis on the cover. It's not in the movie. One of the artists was upset, and on the old, if you have the old grocery store cover, they drew a penis on the scepter. and I think there's penises on his chair. What's his name? Her dad. It's not Aquaman. What's his name?
Neptune.
Sebastian.
I'm guessing that. I'm sorry.
Something like that.
Sebastian is the crab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I never. It's weird. I remember I loved Aladdin growing up, but I was never really into like the Disney animated movies. There was just I don't know. Maybe it was too sappy for me growing up. I mean, they're great films. Like they're great animated films. There's a lot of care put into them, but it was weird. You know how there were all those like crazy racist people that were mad about the live action Little Mermaid? I'm like, what? Were you guys this affected by the original one? Like, what the fuck? I really never got it. I never.
What race is a mermaid supposed to be? It's like when people get mad that when they have a black Santa, it's like Santa's not real, guys.
Have you ever seen black people get mad about the black Santa?
No.
You know what? Get your popcorn ready for that. You want to see people get really upset? Way more. Think about the most racist Dave Chappelle sketch you've ever seen in your life. Go to, and I don't even know if these things exist anymore. Go to like some inner city mall where the only person that's going to dress up like Santa is like the large black security guard. Oh, those people are so mad. We can't even get a real Santa Claus up in here.
You know what I was going to say real quick about, since we were talking about Little Mermaid, I feel like movies like the Little Mermaid are almost like the downfall of the best period of Disney.
Really?
And I know, no, that sounds crazy, but like my preferred Disney is like that 70s and especially early 80s period, where like in the 70s they start doing stuff like the live action movies like Escape to Witch Mountain.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s the children's Disney movies weren't selling anymore in the early 80s.
No.
They weren't doing well. So they started transitioning into doing these more like dark fantasy for teenagers type family movies, like these really like The Watcher in the Woods is the big one, or Dragon Slayer. You know, that was like, that for me is like primo. I like that like kind of slightly edgier Disney that existed. And then when stuff like The Little Mermaid comes around, that's all gone by then, you know.
Well, it was soon after that, it kind of goes to shit. You get Fern Gully.
Yeah.
And what else? What comes after that?
The Land Before Time.
The Land Before Time. There's like a lot of movies that you probably have to be a little younger than even Kenzo and I. You got to be between Kenzo and I and JG to maybe appreciate that era of Disney.
You know what another darker one was from the 80s that was animated was The Black Cauldron.
Yes.
You remember The Black Cauldron?
Yes.
Like that's like that for me is like, I wish people remember that Disney stuff.
No, I do. I remember that Disney stuff. Major League comes out in 89. If you don't quote Major League, were you even alive in 89? That's
up your butt, Joe Boo.
Up your butt, Joe Boo. Willie Mays Hayes. I loved Major League. Wasn't the biggest fan of Bull Durham, but really loved Major League. Charlie Wild thing. What was his last name?
I was going to say Babbitt, but that was Charlie Babbitt was Rain Man. His married brother.
It's easy to get those two confused. It happens. A movie that is near and dear to my heart because I did have a personal relationship with Olympia Dukakis. Steel Magnolias.
You knew Olympia Dukakis?
I knew Olympia Dukakis. She's the one that told me to quit my job at Starbucks and follow my dreams. I'm being totally serious. I'm not even trying to be funny. She used to come in all the time and she'd talk, and then I'd see her in town and she'd stop and talk to me all the time. Super nice lady.
Huh.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that happen when you live in a city.
And then was it her cousin, Michael Dukakis? I know they were related somehow.
Yes. People always walked up to her and assumed she was one of the people from Golden Girls. It happened all the time. But she was one of those people that was nice to everyone. Everyone in a service position. So every door, I don't even know if there's really door people like that in San Francisco anymore. But if you were like a door person, she was nice to everyone that like served her in some capacity. So a lot of us that worked in that area all knew her, and she would call you by name. Super, super nice lady. I was really, really sad when she took me aside to be like, "You don't look happy here. What do you really want to do?"
Now that I hadn't thought of it in a while, but still, Magnolia's had a crazy cast.
Right?
Lane, what Dolly Parton was in it, and then
Julia Roberts,
Daryl Hannah too, right?
Yeah, isn't she in it?
Daryl Hannah,
Julia Roberts. Did you say Julia Roberts?
Julia Roberts,
yeah. Even some of the male cast, the supporting cast, Tom Skerritt. I've always liked Dylan McDermott. He's in that. It's got a really good
Speaking of a person that's looked the same age for a long time, what kind of blood boy does that guy have? Because he's got to be knocking on 60, and he's still ripped too. I don't know, man. If that dude isn't a vampire, like seriously, because how old is Dylan McDermott?
He does look like the same in every movie.
When has he looked young? He's been like a 30-year-old, 40-year-old for 40 years.
Well, that's the thing with Cobra Kai as well. You have Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, Elizabeth Shue. They have not aged.
Elizabeth Shue looks like an attractive older woman, though.
Okay, yeah, she looks good, but like Ralph Macchio does not look 60.
Ralph Macchio has Benjamin Button's disease. So he's actually 147.
Yeah, he was much older than the teenager he played, and Pat Morita was much younger than the septuagenarian Japanese man that he played. And one thing I realized recently was that every Japanese character was actually from California. Kumiko, Pat Morita, the guy that played Chozen. Like they were basically doing caricatures of their grandparents from the old country.
Pat Morita's from the Bay. He's from Vallejo.
It was Red Fox that discovered him and like propelled him into stand-up.
Which is when you hear the real, because he also kind of did that with the Arnold character on Happy Days. When you hear the real Pat Morita talk, you're like, oh shit. And did you ever see who his wife was?
No.
Did you ever watch Blood In, Blood Out, Bound by Honor?
Is that the sequel?
No, Blood In, Blood Out is...
I've seen Blood In, Blood Out.
Yeah, that's the only one.
Okay.
The whole title is Blood In, Blood Out. But sorry. When you're a hood movie purist like yourself.
I didn't know the full title, I guess. Yeah, I've seen it.
Also, a movie you can find on YouTube. But when Benjamin Bratt, what's his name? Bratt. When he's undercover buying the PCP, the chick that grabs his nuts, that's Pat Morita's wife.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah. JG remembers that scene because he's a good man. Go back and watch that scene, Kenzo, and you'll be like that meme of Leo DiCaprio. The nuts right there, the nuts. Ghostbusters 2 comes out. I remember seeing it. I remember the Bobby Brown song for it. Because we went to Raging Waters. My mom took us to Raging Waters on my birthday that year, and that song was inescapable on the radio. That's all I remember about Ghostbusters 2.
I liked Ghostbusters 2, even though it's kind of like the sequel no one asked for and we kind of just tolerate. No, it's like it's not like weirdly, there's like a more like brooding atmosphere to it. Like the whole city is like miserable. Like, and that's literally a plot, but it's kind of like this like moody, like it's a darker version of Ghostbusters in some ways. You know what I mean, Kenzo, or no?
Yeah, because they had like the goo or the ooze under the city, which like was all the bad feelings come to life.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I actually kind of dig remembering.
And then you had Peter McNichol playing the kind of obscure Eastern European character who gets covered in the good goo at the end. He's like, "Why are my drippings with goo?" Which was very highly quoted with my friend group. And then later I found out Peter McNichol is just an American dude.
Is Christy McNichol's brother?
Huh.
Or dad?
Well, he wouldn't be old enough to be your dad, but maybe brother.
Your brother? Mick Nichols, not a name everybody has. Field of Dreams comes out in 89. We don't want to talk about that. We don't talk about anything with Kevin Costner. It's okay. Not that Kevin Costner's a bad guy. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. I'm sure he gives great Christmas presents. I'm sure he tips his waiters real well. I just don't care. When Harry Met Sally comes out in 89. Do you think you could make that movie today?
No. Because you have gender normativity there. Like they say, women and men can't be friends, which, I mean, it's very common now for women and men to be platonic friends, but I don't even think you can have that premise in a major film right now.
Can they really, Kenzo? You don't want to bang anyone? Any of those friends? A little bit. You think about it every so often. Like if you and Sarah from Accounts Receivable just accidentally on purpose were under the mistletoe. No?
Well, I'm not friends with Sarah from Accounts Receivable, so no comment.
JG's like, yes, I'm hitting it.
There's also friends with benefits.
I went to the theater to see this movie. I was one of those like save your lunch money, the change from the couch kids, to see movies, and I went to go see Parenthood. And I watched it every time it came on cable. I think I rented it. I actually really like Parenthood. There's no reason why a 12-year-old kid should understand the ins and outs of that level of maturity and appreciate it. But I really did enjoy that film. Did you ever see Parenthood, Kenzo?
I love that movie. And then there's that one subplot of it was Joaquin Phoenix, I think, played Diane Weist's kid in there, and he like discovers masturbation.
Yeah.
And Keanu Reeves explains to him, that's what little kids do, or that's what little dudes do. He was Martha Plimpton's deadbeat boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like that. The last two sentences I just said were just amazing, by the way. Diane Weist, Joaquin Phoenix, Keanu Reeves, Martha Plimpton, Rick Moranis was in that.
Don't Steve you feel Martin. Bad for Diane Weist? Because every kid our age wants her to be his mom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lost Boys.
Oh. Lost Boys, Parenthood. What other movie was she in? She's kind of
She was the always the embattled single mom just trying to do right.
When she makes that face where she squints her eyes. That's
the scene from and this is a joke that I rip off in my real life, and now I think about it, was in Parenthood, the part where Diane Weist is really heightened about something, and she's like, I shouldn't be a grandmother. I was at Woodstock, and then Richard Mazer is her boyfriend at the time. He's like, I was there too, and she goes, I thought you looked familiar. And I find myself in a lot of situations where someone was just like, oh, I was at this, the 2019 Chicago teachers strike. I thought you looked familiar.
That was the 2019.
So what do you guys think of the two Parenthood TV shows? There was one that was like really short-lived in 1990. Then I think there was one that lasted like 6 seasons.
I'm not watching any of them. Nothing against them. I just looking at 89 and thinking about stuff now. And I'm so glad I don't have television.
Right.
Because I'm tired of remakes. I'm tired of movies that are rehashes of old things.
That's like, did you see, speaking of movies that are getting remade now, did you see there's like I don't know if it was BET that did it, but it's some entertainment company like BET that's mainly for like black audiences. They just made like a black version of Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Have you seen that?
Oh my God.
I was just like, what?
It's The Burbs, but black. Like you're really reaching at this point for the bottom of that barrel. Right. You're like, it's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, but black. Like at some point, you can't just put but black on the end of everything. You can make a good movie that doesn't have to be like as shitty as some of the movies, the black movies I watch are, because there's black filmmakers out there that's just like, hey, I'm just gonna make a romance movie with black people in it. Like you can do that and it doesn't have to suck. There was one that did suck in the 90s. Oh, with Jada Pinkett. Jason's lyric. Why would you have a movie based in Texas and cast nothing but New Yorkers and then be like, hey, you guys can sound like you're from Texas? No, they can't. They all sound like they're doing blackface. You might as well have got white people painted them black, and I would have got the same thing out of it. But
I just want to know who thought making a remake of there's literally someone out there that's we should remake Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
But black.
Right.
The charm for that movie for me, it was Christina Applegate, who I of course had a huge crush on at the time. She got to not play a dumb bimbo.
Yeah.
And we got to see that she had some comedic range, and she got to play this intelligent character. And I think that was a big appeal of that film. So like, even if they recasted it with someone who looked exactly like her, I don't get it. I don't buy it.
Like, who's going to be the Christina Applegate character? The dishes are done, man. Like, you can't redo. Some of these movies too are of a time that it doesn't work. I didn't appreciate the remake of When a Stranger Calls, mainly because most people remember the made for cable When a Stranger Calls Back, and that is the most intense. Was it 15 minutes? That and like the first Jeepers Creepers are some of the most intense 15-20 minutes of cinema. You can't get that back because it's just such a different time. And there's so many caveats you need to kind of sort of make it make sense that it's like, it's too much. It's too, my cell phone doesn't have reception. It's like, oh, well then fuck off. I don't know what to tell you. Fuck right off. There's too many things you have going for you for this to fuck off. We can't end because you guys have been here for too long.
Well, we got to talk about Batman a little bit. We didn't really
okay, I was going to skip down to Bill and Ted, but I'll say this and then I'll shut up. Batman, for me, was the end all be all of superhero movies. I understand the excitement of young people for superhero movies because Batman, when the preview came out and the gangster's running and Michael Keaton does this and knocks him out, I was like, what is this? I watched Superman 1 through 47. I watched the Batman Adam West reruns. I watched the Super Friends cartoon, even the really horrible ones from the mid 70s when they would play reruns. I watched the original Space Ghost, not the talk show, but the actual action show of Space Ghost, the Herculoids. I was that kid. Of course, I watched all the anime, Robotech and stuff. So any superhero movie, I was all in for. I walked 5 miles to Blockbuster to go rent The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
And was so hurt he didn't have. I was more hurt that he just didn't have the Punisher shirt. That's all I wanted. So when Batman came out and he's got all the stuff, he's got a dope car. Michael Keaton was great. I begged my grandmother. My mom didn't have any fucking money. I begged her to get me a Batman t-shirt. She took me to the mall where I could pick out my Batman t-shirt. And it was a comic rendition of both of Batman and the Joker. And said arch enemies. And I wore it to school the day that she got it for me, or the next day. Everybody was like, dang, you got a cool Batman shirt. I was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. And my grandma washed that shirt and she faded it.
Oh.
And that was the day I vowed to never have a woman touch my clothes again. I was like, you raggedy broad, how dare you fade my Batman shirt? Fuck is wrong with you? So I love Batman. I love Batman. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I will shut up now.
I love Batman too. I think Tim Burton did a really good job with it. He really picked up on this sort of film noir aspects of it. It reminds me a lot of like Neil Adams era Batman in some ways, with that noirish sort of darker edge element that you see in the 70s Batman comics. But I think it's interesting. I hear people say that it revitalized the superhero genre in film.
Yes.
Now, So before Batman, what superhero movies were?
It's the canon failures of Superman.
Right.
So Superman.
Well, there was Superman 4 was just an unfinished
3
film,
and
basically.
4. Don't forget 3.
Well, 3 was the Richard Pryor one, and I know people don't really like that one, but 4 was like literally an unfinished movie.
They're using Superman 1 scenes.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's just don't watch. You can watch them. They invented a dumbass character.
That was like the Karate Kid 3 of that franchise.
Yes.
Yeah. But you had Cannon doing Superman 4. At the same time, they're trying to get the Toby Hooper Spider-Man made, and they can't get that made because Hooper wants to make it into like it wasn't even going to be a superhero movie. It was going to be a horror movie that Toby Hooper wanted to do. Then Joseph Zito wrote a script that was more, I think, superhero oriented, but that just never gets made because canon is a mess at the time. Masters of the Universe was a mess. That's another, I would call that a superhero movie, canon sort of disaster. But then you have Batman come out. But I disagree that it actually revitalized the superhero genre in movies. Well, I mean, okay, so in what, 1990, we get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I will give people that. Okay. But really, at the time, Marvel was like in the crapper as a comic book company. They literally are going bankrupt and file for bankruptcy in 96. They're selling all their rights to Roger Corman. You know, like Roger Corman is making the Fantastic Four movie and never even releasing it. He made it on a budget of peanuts and just never released it so he could retain rights and sell it later when it would be worth more money. You know, we don't really get those big budget superhero movies until the 2000s with Spider-Man. You know, if you think about all the 90s superhero movies that come out, they're all really weird properties. And in a way, I like that. I like that you would get like
and Roger Corman to do with the darkness of Batman.
Yeah.
And it is because Superman is very shiny. When you go back, kids, I don't know if you feel the same way. Go back and watch the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, the first one. No, watch the first two. I think they're really entertaining. And I've yet to see a Superman film capture whatever they do in the late 70s, early 80s with that. I think it has something to do with Christopher Reeve really being Superman for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But it's a very bright film.
Right.
Batman is so dark and comic booky that the movies that follow, The Crow, Blade, Darkman, like to your point, yes, these are properties that nobody's really given a damn about, but they're also these dark movies that you can get away with a lot of stuff. You don't have to stay, because when you do Batman and Superman, there's an origin story that everybody knows, and you can't stray from that. When you're doing Blade, nobody knows who the hell Blade is.
Well, that's what I was gonna. That's what I was going to say. The 90s is actually really weird after Batman, like in terms of superhero movies, because you're getting like Vampirella, the movie. They did what? The Phantom with Billy Zane. What? You know, Judge Dredd gets made into a crappy Stallone movie.
Really horrible.
You get Tank Girl, Pamela Anderson. They made a freaking Barbed Wire movie with Pamela Anderson. Like they were making 90s bad girl comics into movies. You know, it's such a weird, but I feel like it really did not catch on until the 2000s. When Spider-Man got made, that's like the beginning of like superhero domination of cinemas. You know, I almost feel like Batman was like an anomaly for its time.
Spawn.
You know, it was like the Spawn.
You know, again, these are all
like,
really dark.
That's like later 90s though. That like from I don't know, maybe like 89 to like 97 or 98 when Blade comes out. I feel like you don't see as many like superhero movies that catch on.
Not franchise-wise, because Batman ends up failing in the mid-90s. We have to remember that Batman and Robin, Michael Keaton not staying on as Batman. There's a bit of a shark jumping with it. You have the first blonde Batman with Val Kilmer. By the time you get Robin, by the time you get Dr. Freeze, it doesn't work. We have to admit, Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I loved Heath Ledger's performance, and I love Mark Hamill as the voice of the Joker. Jack Nicholson really lays the groundwork for what Heath Ledger gets to chew on in his Joker portrayal. Because Cesar Romero is fun in the TV show, but Jack Nicholson is frightening.
Yeah. a truly disturbed human being capable of absolutely anything. Like that's the impression you get from him, is like, this guy will like just rip off someone's face for no reason and just walk away.
Yeah.
Which you didn't get that from previous Jokers, outside of the comic books.
What did you think of Batman Begins? I need to hear your Batman.
Oh, the initial one I love. The first two. The first one I absolutely loved. I think that one of the things that really made it was the fact that Michael Keaton was not the person you would think to cast him.
They didn't want him.
Yeah,
he was Mr. Mom.
Yeah, he was Mr. Mom. He was in Gung Ho.
Michael Keaton.
And the critics, or before it came out, people were like speculating that he wasn't going to be able to pull it off because he's kind of this likable, affable, older kind of not old, but older actor, not the handsome billionaire that you think of as Bruce Wayne. Definitely not a superhero type, but he totally pulled it off. And he just had a sort of a depth to the character that I think others since him have not been able to pull off.
Ooh.
Christian Bale, I like what he does with Batman, but it is a very one-dimensional, like, I am the Dark Man, I'm avenging death. Whereas Michael Keaton seemed like a fully rounded character who had a sense of humor, was able to actually interact with other people. You can kind of see him being the type of person who can interact with the public and with the aristocratic class of Gotham, and the fact that he could pull Kim Basinger in that film. Like, he actually was convincing in all those aspects of Batman.
I enjoyed the Michael Keaton Batmans, and once they started changing Batmans, I think that's when that franchise is just going. It's downhill from there. And kind of to your point, JG, about revitalizing the genre, does it really? Yes, because it does give you a template, but they kind of blow up the template and go, how many more of these properties can we put in? Because they're trying to sell toys. Like, we can't forget.
That's the problem with Tim Burton's, Batman, is that like, especially Batman Returns, it's like, how do you sell toys of like Catwoman, who is very clearly like this S&M icon in Burton's vision?
Actually, I have a Catwoman. I have an Eartha Kitt Catwoman that my daughter bought me. And she said, I saw a black superhero and I figured you'd like it. I have no idea who this is. She's like, I have no idea who that is. I was like, sweet child. Thank you. I need you guys to talk about Bill and Ted before we go. I'll let Kenzo go first.
It's funny because I was actually thinking about the 6-episode sketch comedy show that Alex Winter starred in and produced called The Idiot Box. Do you remember that, Jason?
It sounds familiar.
And I'm not leaving you out of this, JG, just that this was very obscure and very much of its time. I think it came out like shortly after Bill and Ted did. It was on MTV, and those 6 episodes really were informing of my sense of humor and the things that I find funny, because it was just kind of over the top, ridiculous, people overacting in every possible way. And you can find them like on YouTube now, but like, I actually was Twitter friends when I was on Twitter with Alex Winter, and I kept bugging him to like put them on DVD. Like, you could put them all on one DVD, and he said, well, it's already on YouTube and there's really going to be no interest in it. But I was, that whole Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, that sense of humor, I was totally sold on that. I love that. George Carlin, just the fact that these guys were just kind of these dumbass skater guys who they don't actually save the world. Well, they do eventually, after the events of the first film. But in the first film, they really were just trying to save their own grade, so then they can later on go and save the world. So it was actually it was a low stakes plot that they had to go to great lengths to for the entire story arc. But then, of course, led on to, after that film, supposedly they saved the world. I knew every single line from both of the films. It was definitely one of my favorites of that time.
JG?
I never got into the Bill and Ted movies, so I can't really comment.
Really?
No, I don't know if I've even seen the second one. I saw the first one when I was younger, but I don't remember much about it. I need to revisit them.
It was mandatory. I wonder if, and I'll ask this question in closing because we do have to go. We've been going for a little over an hour, and I can't. It's later where these gentlemen are. I can't hold them longer. Are you guys joining me for the champagne room for the call in or no? You don't have
I
to.
can't.
I'll join you.
I knew Kenzo. I got him late on the school night. Is it different when you have to go to the theater and let's get in the Wayback Machine to 1989 where it's like when that comes on in the theater, you got like 6 months to a year before you're going to get it on video. And even longer before it comes on television. So the only way you're going to see it and see it when you want to see it is, saving up your shekels and going to the theater, which was somewhat affordable at the time because we're like 12 and under, so we got a special price. I don't know if they still have that price for little people. Your son is a little person, Kenzo. Does he get a special price, an under 12 price?
Well, no, it's $20 to see a movie, $18 if you're under 12. It's like
Jesus
a $2
Christ.
discount.
You can adjust for inflation. Those prices were not that high.
No. Well, what I was really blessed with was in my neighborhood, there was a second run theater that showed movies for $1.
Yep.
And then if I, got a ride from someone, there was another second run theater that had $5 movies. So that was kind of what's salvaged movies for me. Like if I couldn't get someone to drive me and pay for me to go to the big multiplex, I knew that I could go see it in my neighborhood, a short bike ride from my house. So a lot of movies. I remember Bill and Ted. It was a movie I saw multiple times because a friend of mine and I, when we were 11, a year after it came out, would go there and see it like every weekend.
Yeah, for $1. We had a dollar theater. We had $1. We had a regular theater upstairs. There was like 4 theaters upstairs, and then downstairs was the $1 movie. And it was that's where I saw like all the movies I had no business watching, like Ransom, Fried Green Tomatoes. It's $1. What are you gonna do? You go to the mall, it's $1.
Air conditioning.
Movie.
That was a big piece of it for us. It was like I didn't have air conditioning at home, but I can go pay for $1. And you see in one movie and maybe you get caught trying to sneak into the other movie and like, oh, you got me. Here's another $1.
Oh, do you guys want a secret to sneaking into the movies if it's still there before we go? For people that vacation in Las Vegas, 2 things. If you go in the summer, it's a lot cheaper because it's ridiculously hot. Nobody wants to go there. Number 2, there was, I don't know if it's still there, in the, what's the Las Vegas theme or what's the New Orleans theme? The Orleans. In the Orleans, there's a movie theater and no one goes to it. And if you get a ticket to a movie, you can just watch movies all day long. My ex and I would go to the Orleans. She goes, "You can just sneak into the movies at the Orleans." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "If you just go pay for a movie, you can just walk into any other movie." I was like, "I don't believe you." She goes, "Watch." And I can't remember what we went to go see. And sure enough, we would just go there and we had nothing to do for a day. We'd go there early and watch every movie. You could go to the Orleans. I'm saying it. Nobody's watching this show. Go to the Orleans. If it's not there anymore, I'm sorry. You missed out. But if it's there, just do it. They're not stopping you. No one's watching movies there. Have fun. Any parting words? What's the best movie of '89, JG?
I don't know if I could pick just one movie.
Look who's talking.
There was one movie I wanted to mention that you had mentioned in the notes that I really like.
What's that?
Pet Sematary.
Ooh,
and I know people always say to me, "Oh, it's not as good as the book." And I mean, I think it's a movie that's it's sort of like Spielberg, and that Spielberg knows how to pull at your heartstrings. But if you don't get like struck by that scene with Gage in the truck, I mean, I don't know. That movie is very unsettling to me, even though it's a very slick, big budget. No, not big budget, but it's a very slick sort of Stephen King adaptation. Mary Lambert is very good at directing it. I think she's a very unheralded director amongst female directors. So I really like Pet Sematary. That first Pet Sematary. I like the second one as like a camp movie, but the first Pet Sematary is like kind of, the stuff with Gage is like really upsetting.
Oh my God, that poor kid.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yes.
Fred Gwynn getting his like throat slit by a little kid.
Yeah.
Because I loved the Munsters as a kid.
Yes.
Like watching that fucked me up.
What's for you? What's your top movie for you, Kenzo?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I'd have to just probably say Batman because it had such a huge impact on me and I'd seen it so many times. So I think I would go with that.
There's a lot of great movies in '89. JG made me feel really bad that I forgot my favorite one because it's just such. I forget that it came out in '89 because to me it's a '90s movie. But Heathers, to me, Heathers, outside of the jocks, my high school didn't have jocks. There was a lot about that movie that just I was like, yeah, I know people like that, and I've even the fact that like the idea that suicide can be trendy. Teenage suicide, don't do it. Teenage suicide. She blew it.
It's because they didn't have trigger warnings back then. No. If they had the trigger warnings, then it wouldn't have caught on. People would have been like, "Oh, I can't watch this now."
I mean, there's bulimia is in that movie.
I am so glad that when Paramount, like Paramount's TV network, it used to be Spike, but whatever it's called now, they tried to make a remake TV series of Heathers where the bad guys would have been the popular kids would have been like trans kids apparently, and they did one episode of it and just never released it. And I thank the heavens that it didn't get released. Did you hear about that a few years ago? It's just like why would you make that?
I would have fought that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. Just it's okay that's all it was a movie. You don't need to remake it.
Right.
Don't remake The Craft.
No.
You know what somebody said that made me laugh really hard? The Craft is just juice for goths. The movie Juice. And they had the cast side by side. I died. I was like, oh my God. But we're gonna go.
That's the thing about Heathers real quick is I think people, if they would remake it today, like the remake they wanted to do that I mentioned, it would have been a very agenda-driven movie, like this, like, oh, we're making an anti-SJW movie for the Ben Shapiros of the world, and really, that's not what Heathers was about to begin with.
No,
no, it's look, go back and watch Heathers. It's a great movie.
Oh, by the way, the best Godzilla verse movie comes out in '89 too. Godzilla vs. Biollante.
Is that a Toho film?
Yeah, it's the second Heisei movie. No one knows Godzilla here. What am I? Biollante.
Oh yes. Sorry.
It's the darkest Godzilla verse movie. It's like out of all those like Godzilla verse blah blah blah. That's like the best one, top notch.
You know what other?
Actually, a good story.
You know what else? JG's favorite movie is Troop Beverly Hills. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. We're going to the champagne room. I'm going to open up the phone lines. There's a lot of talk about movies that we haven't touched on. I think you guys forget that that I can find in the United States, about 150 movies came out, maybe a few more. So it's ridiculous that we're going to touch on all of them. I know everyone's going to feel like the movie that they love is the most important for that year, but you got to remember it's my show, not yours. And I even forgot Heathers, and that's my I'm telling you, it is my favorite movie. That's the movie where I saw Shannon Doherty, and it was like, why do birds suddenly appear?
What's your damage, Jason? What's your damage?
It's also why I can't date a white girl. I look at him from afar. Thank you guys. Thank you, Kenzo, so much. We got to do this again, Kenzo. There's a bunch of years in the 90s on that list. We can go over. 94 is on that list. We were both in high school at that time, so I'm sure we have some fun memories and movies to look back on then. If you notice, JG and I did not bring up Society because we actually spoke with the director of Society, Brian Yesna.
I remember that episode.
Is Society technically an '89 movie?
Yes,
it's a '92 movie. Yeah, but it gets released in the U.S. in '92. It only got released in London in '89.
But here's the thing: I don't fucking remember when anything came out in '89, other than fucking Batman. I think MTV did some sort of Heather's push. I went to the theater to see Look Who's Talking. I went to the theater to see Harlem Nights. I think I went to the theater to see Ghostbusters 2. I watched Kickboxer a million times on cable. I watched The Burbs a million times on cable. I watched Glory as an adult.
You ever watch Cyborg? That's another Van Damme one.
I watched Cyborg when it was on cable. I watched Weekends at Bernie's on cable. Most of the movies, other than like Bill and Ted, and I think I went to the theater to see Pet Sematary. Most of the movies that come out in '89, even ones that people are like, don't forget this movie. It's like, dude, I didn't fucking watch that in '89. I watched it at like '98. When I was
definitely Society. I saw years and years after it was released.
Yeah, years later. I didn't even watch Say Anything at the movie theater. I did watch Teen Witch on cable. That's got the greatest rap scene in
I take that.
If you haven't seen the rap scene in Teen Witch, go fucking do yourself a favor and Google that one.
That was definitely a Showtime 3 p.m. every day showed that.
JG, do you remember cable on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, what they would show?
I remember when I would get home, I would call TBS, the Beastmaster station, because they would show like the Beastmaster at 4 p.m.
You could watch on a Teen Witch. What's the movie where the voice of Bobby Hill? I can't think of her real name. Pamela Segal or Pamela Alden. Is that her name? She's the voice of Bobby Hill. She always does stuff with Louis C.K. You know what I'm talking about.
Pamela Adlon.
Yeah. She was in a movie where she wished she was a boy. That came on cable all the time.
I don't remember that one. I remember just one of the guys.
Just one of the guys?
But that one was like a more of a late night selection on HBO.
That's also on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I feel like watching that. Can we watch that like right now? Fucking love Just One of the Guys.
Another William Zabka.
See Conan. Did you see Conan? This is so funny. Conan says, damn, y'all doing a movie show against ours. That's cold. I didn't know you guys were on. You guys are on right now. It's not necessarily against yours. And it's the internet, man. Quit acting like this is ABC. You guys are CBS because you guys are CBS. Just remember that. You're Matlock, okay? You're Murder, She Wrote. Just kidding. We're probably the old people station. We have to really go. Kenzo has to go. Kenzo, again, thank you for taking the time. JG,
definitely be on. I'll be on again. This is fun.
JG, I will send you the link in your email for the Champagne Room. And guys, go to Patreon right now. Patreon.com/BitterLake We're going to open up the phone lines. If we forgot something, call in and yell at us about it. Tell us about what movies you were watching in '89. Did you sneak into the theater? Did you have a dollar theater where you're at? I want to hear all about it. And then also, we're going to get into one of the best movies from '89, Harlem Nights. I loved Harlem Nights. Eddie Murphy didn't let me down until Vampire in Brooklyn. That's when he broke my heart. That being said, let's get out of here. We are out.
Back when Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and they'd say, "Oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America?" I said, "Well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers, and they have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government."